everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And today we're going to go over my updated gear as of now, it is August 2024. The last time we did this, I think it was February, and a lot has changed since then. So I guess we will start with the camera I'm now shooting, which is I have to remember to hold everything in front of me because it's the green screen, but This is the Sony a7S III. Low resolution camera, more suited. I would imagine most people are using it for video. I have shot video on it. It does take really nice video. I'm using it for stills, and I find it fantastic for stills. It is definitely one of the better cameras I have used. Admittedly, I've not used an A1 or an A7R5 or anything like that, so I don't necessarily know what I'm missing. But I really enjoy it.
How old is it as a camera?
I'm sorry?
How old is it? Kind of, what was it introduced alongside?
I think it came out right before the A1.
Okay, so kind of, yes.
Yeah, so it's relatively newish. One thing I really like about it, and I never really cared about this in a camera before, but now that I have it, I like it, is the low light capability. You can shoot this thing at super high ISOs, and it still comes out with a really clean picture. And obviously with AI, noise reduction, all that kind of stuff, you can get away with it anyway. But it's nice to have a clean file right out of the camera, because the less I have to do in post, the better. So I really enjoy it. Autofocus is competent. It's not flawless, but I'm not shooting birds in flight with it. So for underwater work, it's pretty good for that. And image quality, like I said, it's low resolution. Image quality is still really nice, and I don't crop a lot, so I'm not finding myself necessarily in want of extra resolution. Obviously, if I had it, it's cool because I like to pixel peep and see all the details. But I don't find myself necessarily needing anything more at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, also, we all shot 6 megapixel cameras and they look great across 2 pages of magazine. Yep. And then we went to 12 megapixel cameras and they still look great across 2 pages of magazine. Yep. And now we shoot with 50 megapixel cameras and they still look great across 2 pages. So,
yeah.
Yeah. There's only so many pixels you can put, you can see. I think they say that, it's something like 16 to 18 is kind of all, even, for a billboard, you just can't print more than that. Yeah. No one's going to look at it up close. So just because you can see it on a computer screen by zooming in and zooming in really doesn't mean you need it.
And that's one of the things I like. If it looks good in a decently sized print, I'm cool with it. And I have some big prints from this already, and from the D700, which was another 12 megapixel camera that I used forever, that I have printed 24 by 36, and they look fantastic. And again, you're not looking at a print that big from right in front of your face. You're looking at it from across the room or from a couple feet away, where you would never know what camera it came from. So
what lenses do you have for it, or which of the lenses you're mainly using at the moment? I think you had the 90.
So I have the 90mm on there right now, and then I have my 13mm RS, which I still had last time. It's been redone. So it's even better now, but those are the two main ones I use. Actually, they're the only two ones I use underwater at the moment. I would like to get the Sony 50mm, even though I've, from you and from others, heard that it is unbelievably slow. But for here and what I shoot, I think it would be a really useful lens.
I'm currently debating whether to take it to Komodo with me. I know I'd use it there, but I'm also aware that we've got some quite restrictive flights, particularly on the way back. And so I'm kind of weighing up what I take and what I don't take. And I know I'd like to have it, but I also know it will frustrate me as well when I do a dive with it. So.
Yeah. So I think mostly I want it for, frogfish and seahorses here, because we have a lot of bigger individuals that
it's
the
great.
90mm.
It really is.
Yeah. And we don't always have the best water conditions, and a lot of the individuals we have here are too big for the 90 when you're trying to shoot them close. Where I think the 50 would really shine. So at some point I will pick that lens up, but I don't have it as of yet. Perhaps the biggest change, and this is my housing. So Isoda A7S III. This is the first aluminum housing I've used ever that isn't Nauticam. I was not sure how much I would enjoy it. Turns out it is a really, really nice housing, and has surpassed my expectations in terms of how nice the housing is and how much I thought I would actually like it. For
it
sure,
nice and compact as well. Just when you held it up,
it's really small, so it's significantly smaller. I had the it's not mine, but I had the Nauticam A93 housing here, which is already a pretty compact housing. This housing is much smaller and more compact, which in the past I wouldn't necessarily have enjoyed because it would have felt cramped. But I think Isotta did a pretty good job of making it all lay out in the proper places. There's a few things that aren't quite as nice as I would like. Like I said, the shutter speed and aperture dial aren't as smooth as I would like. That could just be my individual housing, or it could be an Isotta thing. I'm not entirely sure. But the ergonomics are really nice. I love they have like these kind of curved handles, which I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the Isotta crossbar, which allows mounting all the way across. So you can add strobes there, lights. I attach my monitor there all the time.
Yeah, for you, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I actually really appreciate is the back part of this housing is really thin. So there's not a whole lot of to the back of the housing. And what that allows me to do is lay the monitor completely flat across the back, whereas with the Nauticam Sony housings, for example, it's more at an angle. But if I need it to lay flat, you can't do that with, at least with the A93 housing, and with the Isotta one, I can, which has been really helpful. I don't have a vacuum system on it. I haven't used a vacuum system in I don't know how long. But it has a double O-ring seal. Seal's really nice. I will say, if I didn't have access to Isaac, who everyone watching this probably knows because he's the 13 millimeter man, if I didn't have access to him, this would not be as convenient a housing to use. So he has made me some custom ports with some adapters built in. He's customized the 13 mil to work with Isotta, and has given me access to things like the EMWL that I would not have necessarily had access to shooting Isotta. So the port that's on here right now is the 90 mil port, and he built the Nauticam bayonet into that port so that I can use all the Nauticam bayonet optics with it if I chose to, like the EMWL. So if I didn't have access to him and he wasn't a good friend, it would be more difficult to shoot Isotta, especially here in the States where there aren't a lot of dealers for them. But fortunately, it all worked out, and as of now, I'm really, really enjoying it. I like having an aluminum housing and not that little Sea Frogs housing that I was shooting for a while. It's much nicer to have this and not be worried about what is going to go wrong on every single dive.
Yeah.
Like just worried about with the Sea Frogs. But yeah,
you've not been tempted to put a vacuum seal on it?
Nope. So I know I used to have, when I had way back, every housing I shot, I made sure it had a vacuum seal on it, and then I had my Nauticam D700. Never had a vacuum on that, and it kind of I stopped necessarily caring about them.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't leak before we had vacuum seals, but people just like the security that they bring.
And I definitely understand that, and the housing does have a leak detector built in, so if water gets in, you'll know. But just be careful about keeping your O-rings clean, and I'm not too concerned about it. And I haven't, knock on wood, haven't had any problems. And I don't anticipate it as long as I'm paying attention to what I'm doing when I seal the housing all up. So I get the vacuum systems, but I don't necessarily, I get why they're popular. I get how they can save you. But at least for me, I'm pretty careful about when I seal the housing up and not too concerned about having any sort of water intrusion. And 90% of the time, at least currently, where I shoot, I walk in off the beach, so if water gets in, I'll know right away, and I can pick the housing up. And
I think the vacuum is quite nice on those dives because it does keep the housing more tightly closed in the shallows and stops you getting as much sediment around those O-rings. Yes.
Yeah. So you definitely do get more sediment.
I'm completely with you that they are also an unnecessary thing. They don't make you take better photos. So,
yeah. So the other new thing since last time is the EMWL. It's one of those things that I definitely shouldn't have bought, but it's a lot of fun, so I don't really regret it. And it comes with me on most dives locally here now because it's the perfect lens for the bridge.
And are you using that with the monitor flipped, or have you got any? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the only parts that I have: the focusing unit, which it's the Sony and Canon RF focusing unit, and then the 160-degree optic. I've used the 130, and I like that as well. If I could afford them both, I would have gotten them both, but the 160 is better for me. And I use it with the monitor, which I think we talked about last time, because I think I still had it at that point. I think I had it then.
Yeah, I think that we did that whole episode on whether you should shoot
Yeah,
viewfinder, monitor, or LCD screen.
yeah. So I always use the monitor when I use the monitor now, whether I'm shooting macro or whether I'm shooting the EMWL, just because I find it allows for easier compositions and I don't have a viewfinder. So I like shooting the monitor and it allows me to flip the image with the EMWL without needing the relay.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say about the monitor we didn't say in that long episode we did on them was the fact that I think the monitor as well does save you camera battery.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is particularly someone like you who goes out and does long dives, long days shooting. Actually, taking that drain off a mirrorless camera battery is quite a big advantage of using a monitor.
And at least with the monitor I have, which is the Kraken 5-inch monitor, it uses a big big proprietary battery pack, which will last seemingly forever. And the Kraken monitor itself is really bright, so I just usually knock the brightness levels down a little bit, and then that battery will last days, which is really, really nice. So then other new stuff, we went over the EMWL, we've talked about that in a couple. I don't remember if I had these in hand last time we did one of these. These are the Retro Pro Maxes that Retro had sent me to use. I still have them. They're awesome.
Yeah. You're still coming to a conclusion about them.
Yeah, exactly. But they're awesome. One of my favorite strobes I've shot. I really like the light quality from them. I really enjoy them for wide angle, and for macro too, but they especially shine with wide angle because they have that really nice wide soft light. And they've made some ergonomic changes that are fantastic, but they've been on the market for a while. Everybody knows them. This is actually pretty exciting. So this is a new Kraken flash that will be coming onto the market in September. And it's like a miniature version of the big one that we have discussed on here before.
Yeah, the 160.
Yes. So this is the KS80. So it's smaller, has about half the power, although I think it actually has more power than it's spec'd at. And it's simpler to use. There's no electronic sync connection. It's just fiber optic. A lot of people gave good feedback, myself included, on disliking the wheel on the KS160. So now it's just two dials on here, one for power and one for the different slave modes. It does have a 3000 lumen video light, and it uses two high capacity 21700s. So again, the batteries will last forever. And I've only had these on. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, on the batteries though, unlike its big brother though, it's not got like a whole unit that you just plug a USB-C in. It's got.
So you do plug directly into the battery. So each battery has a USB-C battery.
Yeah.
I've only shot these on a few dives now, but put the battery in wrong. They're much more compact than the big one, obviously. So they're really, really nice. I was shooting them with the EMWL the other day, and they're the perfect size to just tuck in alongside the EMWL and get light right across the front of the frame. Light quality is pretty similar to the big one, so really nice. I will check back in after using them for real wide angle and not just for macro and close focus wide, but I anticipate them being pretty good for that. And to be honest, I like them more than the big one, and I think they'll be more popular than the big one. I will say though, the KS160 is being redesigned so that it will have these dials instead of the wheel. So I think that'll be a big improvement for those who still want the big strobe but aren't a fan of the ergonomics. The ergonomics will be improved. But I'm really enjoying this little guy, and it's much easier to travel with and move around with than the big one.
How big is it compared to the Retro if you hold them the same distance?
So it's much narrower.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit longer. Although if you have the supercharger or anything on the Retro is going to be longer. But as a base strobe, it's a little longer but much thinner. And I think it'll be a really good strobe for macro, for close focus wide. Whether it is a great wide angle strobe remains to be seen because I haven't used it for that yet. But I used the Retro Originals, which are about the same power as this for a very long time for regular wide angle, and they were good. And this has a round flash tube, which those original Retros did not. So I imagine this will be a pretty decent wide angle strobe, and I look forward to using them more. Have some freshwater stuff coming up where I'll probably use them a lot because of how thin they are. And it'll be easier to get into, shallow water places
Yeah.
than the big ones or the fatter retros.
Mm.
Other than that, that's all the significant upgrades I've had in the past couple months. So a much better shooting experience I'm having than the last time we
Yeah.
did one of these episodes. But yeah, lots
Yeah.
of fun gadgets now.
Yeah, I would say that like with the MWL, it's quite, I know you got Isaac to make you a dedicated or, port, but it's
Yep.
generally pretty easy to find a macro port for most housing brands that ends in a 67mm thread. And as long as you've got that 67mm thread, you can attach the Nauticam bayonet onto it, which then allows you to add the EMWL.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's as long if you've got kind of a big old fashioned macro port with a massive great end to it, it's not going to have a 67mm thread. But over time, most of the manufacturers have gravitated towards making macro ports with 67mm threads because of the popularity of 67mm thread close-up lenses. So
does the EMWL have a threaded option, or is it just the bayonet?
if
I've
you
never
look at that
taken my.
thing on the back of it, it looks like it would unbolt, doesn't it?
It does. I've just never tried
So
it.
I think it's the problem is they're quite heavy, particularly out of the water. And if you've got that whole length of it on there, I think you want it on something more secure like a bayonet.
Yeah.
And particularly with the bayonet, it actually, going into the water with the MWL, it's generally a good idea not to go into the water with a great big thing sticking out the front. You're much better off like having that in a pocket, in a sleeve, or handed down to you once you're in the water if you're jumping in off a boat or something, and then attaching it underwater. And in which case, the bayonet is more secure and more, you're more certain when you put it on. It's easy to cross thread a 67mm thread, particularly on it with something massive on the front of it.
Yeah, much easier just using the bayonet. So that's one thing that's why I like the custom port Isaac had with it just built in. And then he made me an adapter for one of my macro diopters too, just to bayonet it right on as well, which is really nice. So
yeah.
Shout out to Isaac for all of his help and from the underwater community as a whole for figuring out the whole 13mm RS thing, because I see a lot of people shooting with those on Sony's all of a sudden, and he's the one who got that going. So
yeah, well, I'm sure he's done all the conversions as well. So yeah, there's been plenty of them around my way as well. So
I still get messages at least once or twice a week from people asking about them. So it's cool to see that they're having another revival, although it's not fun for the prices because now the prices are all crazy expensive on them now that people know that they're.
Yeah, but I mean, there's been a lot of inflation around anyway on everything. And actually, you compare the price of one of those to buying, a new, say, Canon 8-15 fisheye and a dome port. The price is not that bad, it really isn't. Yeah, so I think it's just okay. And it's not like people are buying a fisheye lens and then they're going to use it loads on land. So having a dedicated underwater one isn't really a big loss. The only problem is if you like doing split levels, suddenly you might have to buy both, which is why I've been for quite a while now, been kind of weighing up, trying to find like a completely manual focused fisheye lens that's good quality. And I know there are several out there. I just haven't got around to trying them and working out which one's good. And then actually traveling with one of those for my split levels. And because, you can just, the focus is always the same every time you go and shoot split levels. You just, take it in the water once, in a pool or something, get the focus set really well for split levels once. You're always going to shoot them with the aperture shut down to get enough depth of field. And then actually it would be quite cool. You'd just always then be ready to shoot your splits. So that's something I've been looking at. And that's more actually for me because I've already got an 8-15. That'd be more about just trying to save a bit of packing weight, really. Taking a dedicated, quite a much lighter mechanical fisheye for splits. Right, we should wrap that up there. Got a bit off topic at the end, as we always do. Normally we say goodbye and then have those conversations, but this time we went straight into it. So thanks again for watching the Underwater Photography Show. We'll be back again soon with another episode.